They say we should have known better than to fall so deep down into this rabbit hole we found. And I was thinking,
hi, this is Nico. You're listening to my dad Rafal, also known as the White Rabbit, and James Jardine on the one and only Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast. Buckle up and enjoy.
deep into this pool of regrettable situations. Pitch black, think back to the last time that we were happy.
Alrighty. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome down the Security Rabbit Hole to a very special three-part series of the Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast. You've got Raph, and I have a guest, and we're going to have a little bit of fun while I think we're going to educate you a little bit. So, a little background. A while back, had Bo on the podcast. We talked. We chatted a little bit about some interesting things. Sat in his office for a bit. Had a conversation. I decided, you know what, this needs to be shared with the world. So we're going to talk about security programs, more specifically, or Atlantically, more specifically, security programs that are based on risk and frameworks and how to get there from here. So I'm going to let him introduce himself. Bo, introduce yourself, buddy.
It is a pleasure to be here. Hey, everyone, I'm Bo Birdwell. This is my second time talking with Ralph. This is actually a great opportunity for me to tackle something, to address something that's, I think, is pretty important to me personally, but also I hear a lot of people talking about it. And I want to use this opportunity to try to explain to people why compliance and security aren't enemies. And I hear that a lot, that, compliance is a joke or compliance gets in the way of security. I'm telling you that we're going to talk through over the next couple of episodes or portions of episodes in the podcast how you can actually start from compliance and actually take a journey that gets you to resources, which will get you to security. And for those that may not be in the same position of, because I'm in a defense industrial base, we're a very heavily regulated industry. You might not have quite the regulatory requirements that we do, but almost every industry has some type of regulatory requirement. And even for those that don't, you could translate compliance with risk. For example, threat actors from ransomware or nation state actor, whatever your industry's biggest thing is. Ransomware is pretty common though. And the difference where I think compliance has an advantage over just talking about risk in general is that when you start with compliance, it's black and white. Risk is kind of uncertain, that won't maybe not happen to me, and getting money or justifying resources is harder than when it's a black and white contractual requirement. So that's why I'm starting there, and that's why I want to address this, because I've heard a lot of people in my own industry badmouth compliance, and I'm going to show you that compliance is your friend, and that's what I want to get out of this. I like
it. All right, so we're going to, as we've hinted, this is going to be in three parts. We're going to do this little intro for you guys. It's going to be about 15, 20 minutes or so to get you kind of thinking in the right way. The second part is going to be the kind of what you need to know to get you started, how to report and stuff like that. And then the last part is going to be sort of the magic, and that'll require a little more thought on your behalf. And maybe I'd recommend a notebook and a good stiff cup of coffee to get you through all that, because you're going to want to really pay razor sharp attention. All right, no further ado. Bo, put it on screen and let's roll. Yes, we have slides for you guys. While you're doing that, I want to just say thanks to everybody that's catching the show, and hopefully you guys are enjoying what we're doing. And here we go. Let's take it away, Bo.
Hello, everyone. And I titled this discussion about using regulatory compliance to boost your security and justify budget. And at the end of this talks, I will get you to the point where you can actually see a line from compliance, improving security, and getting the resources you need so you can actually make it work.
I like that.
So how are we going to do that? As Rafal said, there's 3 parts to this. First one we're going to start with is just basically the orientation. So the first thing I want people to understand is everything I'm telling you has been tested and been utilized for over 3 years. So that none of this is, just out of a book and sounds good to me, or anything along the lines of this is just, conventional wisdom or something you can put on a bumper sticker. What this is stuff that a lot of people pay for. And I'm a really big fan of helping people do their own thing. I'm a big believer in, teach a man to fish and he eats for a lifetime. So that I bring this presentation to you with the intentional goal of you being able to understand how you can help yourself. Because unfortunately, I don't care how much you pay a consultant, at the end of the day, all they're doing is helping you to help yourself. No consultant can come in and implement your cybersecurity program. They can't do that. They might be able to give you a flight plan on how to do that. They might be able to write some policies. They might be able to do a risk assessment. But no matter what the product they produce is, you're the one cashing the check. If they're doing a risk assessment, it's off of information you provided them. If they're building policies, you're the one that's going to have to implement them. So the actions we're going to talk about today are geared specifically so that you can do this yourself. I also happen to know, as a mathematical certainty, that certain consultants pay anywhere from high 5 figures to low 6 figures for the stuff we're talking about, not because there's any selling going on here, but because it works. Nothing in here is something that hasn't been tested and proven to work. So first thing I want to highlight to everyone is that it works because you work. This takes the InfoSec person on the team has to be willing to actually go beyond, the staying in their nice lane, if you will, and being willing to actually build the bridge between IT, the users, the departments, the business units. You have to spread yourself out, get the buy-in, and it's not more work, it's more rewarding work. You have to be willing to actually do stuff that stretches your understanding of maybe your traditional role, because a lot of InfoSec people aren't very excited about learning what the business does. They want to just focus on alerts or focus on scanning or whatever. And I'm just saying the secret to success is by you being integrated in the business. You succeed when the business succeeds. And the way you get success is by showing that you're bringing value to the company. And one of the biggest things on that is that regulatory compliance brings value to the company. Because when you are compliant with the contractual requirements, you get more contracts. When you have, let's say, an ISO 27001 certification, that is a neutral party patting you on the back. We're all really good at saying how great we are, right? Yeah, if you want to know how good I am, just sit by me for 30 minutes and I'll knock your socks off. That doesn't really get you business, though. What gets you business is being able to show that you have the ability to protect your customers' data, to build them a product that's secure, to actually improve the business opportunities for your company. That is really how you can succeed. And everything we're going to talk about in this 3-part series will help you do that. And I'm telling you that this is not a 3-step process, and in 3 months you're going to be swimming in resources. You're going to be doing work for a long time to build the credibility to get the resources, because almost every industry is not looking to rain money on cybersecurity right now. What industry?
Well,
go ahead, brother.
Just to interrupt, credibility is such an underused, or in some cases overused, but such an important word, because when cyber people talk about credibility, it's generally in our own sphere, right? Do you have street cred? Do people listen to you? That kind of thing. But that's not what we're talking about here. What you're specifically talking about is do you have the ability to talk at a broader scale to the rest of your organization that doesn't actually necessarily live in the same world, the same domain that you do? And do they listen to you and go, okay, I didn't quite understand all that, and some of it makes absolutely no sense to me, but he sounds like he knows what he's talking about. He's done this before. All right, I'm in, right? I just wanted to highlight that because credibility, it does take a long time to build, and it's super easy to lose. And we've seen it in the news. We've seen it all over the place. And I think it just bears repeating and highlighting.
I would offer a Rafal, just as a tangent on that. Credibility is built by transparency.
Oh, I like that.
Because trust but verify is everyone's first inclination when you're asking them to do something that they're not familiar with, especially when it ties to their ability to generate a revenue for the company. Everything InfoSec does comes at a price to someone. Even if you're just going to start managing phones, they're not going to be able to download the apps they want. I can give examples for everything. Everything InfoSec does has an impact, and the credibility comes by being transparent, being able to connect it to a clear business requirement, and being able to show it works. And those are the things that will get you resources. So when you talk about getting resources, the first thing not everyone, but most people think of when they're talking about resources, that's from senior leaders. And I'm not going to give you any great insights as far as, yes, there's someone else out there that has money. No, if you want to go to money, go to the people that have money. You're not going to find this under a tree or digging, shaking couches and finding it in under seat cushions. You need to go, and you've got to get the trust of the board and the executive leadership team. And that takes convincing. And I'm going to show you how to do that in the following podcast when I actually go into what are the metrics that matter, because you want metrics that matter to them. If they don't care about the metrics, they're not going to they'll find it interesting but not compelling when you're saying you need resources. You have to be able to convince senior leaders that what you're doing makes sense for the business. If security is never the end state. The end state is business continuity. The end state is business growth. The end state is sustained business operations. Security enables success. And if you have to transition from the mindset of the senior leader who may be seeing security seriously only as a cost that has to be, a bill that has to be paid.
Unfortunately,
you can go past that. And that's what we'll go through when you talk about metrics, dashboards, and reports, as well as when you're talking about risk assessments, because I don't know a board out there that hasn't heard the term ransomware, or if you're a publicly traded company that isn't thinking about the SEC cybersecurity rule, or name your industry where there's not something going on where they understand that they need to be listening to you, and it's up to you to not waste their time. And my goal here is to try to arm people, because it's not easy to get in front of the board for 30 minutes and be able to make sure that they leave there more confident in you, and that they don't try, you don't get, because you're always going to have to worry about, at least in the first year or so, the stump the dummy questions. But as you build that relationship, you're going to get past the stump the dummy, and you're going to get into general understanding, general excitement, and you're going to get buy-in. Buy-in leads to resources. And once you get those resources, that's not when you high five, because that's when the work begins. Because requirements without resources, not a lot of work is getting done. So that you have to go in, and you then have to work with the people outside the board, people outside of InfoSec. And maybe that's common sense, but having done this for a long time, it's not common practice. And one thing that I've seen a lot of success in is to start having, even if it's just quarterly, meeting with the managers in the company, the directors in the company, and start explaining to them stuff that gives them the context. Why am I having to update my phone now all the time? Or why do I have to have the servers go down every other Thursday night? Why is this happening? Why are we doing this? Give them the context. Why are we starting to do more phishing tests? Give them the context so that they can then explain to their people why things are happening. Why can't I bring my own USB in? Why do we have to patch so often? Whatever the question is, you really want to give people the opportunity to ask the questions in the audience with senior leaders. And maybe it'll take you a year of doing this quarterly before you start really getting the hard questions. But word of mouth will spread. I can tell you, when you've done this for a year, you start getting people asking for new topics, and it actually grows from just being InfoSec. You actually start getting buy-in from data governance coming to talk about something, or you'll hear something from IT operations, because you start creating a venue that helps corporate explain to the business units why corporate's doing what it is, because this isn't the military where there's some hierarchical change of command. If the business units don't buy into what you're trying to do, you will have friction. And that's a polite way of saying you will most likely fail. So that you have to do this kind of thing, and it just takes time, because a lot of these people only know you, and the joke on InfoSec is you're the guy who says no. So you have to start doing trends to showing yes and it takes years, but a reputation is built. And that is what you can build upon to actually get people to stretch out of their comfort zone. And so I focus on the directors and managers quarterly. I recommend meeting with IT personnel who are doing your patch management, doing your system configurations, doing all the work, account controls, at least monthly. Meet with them to explain where we are, get the metrics out there that I'll be talking about in a few minutes, and make sure that they are on board, that they are invested, and most importantly, that they understand why they're doing what they're doing, because it's not like they have free time. Anyone that thinks a server administrator has a lot of free time doesn't work with a lot of server administrators.
Amen.
So that you need to figure this out, or the network guys. You want to talk about people that are, as my friend who's the manager of the networking team says, everybody needs me to solve their problems, but no one wants to help me solve mine. Because it's hard for these guys. Because he's like, I'm the network guy. Nothing works without the network working. So whenever there's a problem, the first person to go to is a network. So you build relationships. You don't have to be dictatorial to do this. You can use mutual respect, and you can use mutual gain. Because at the end of the day, when we get rid of end of life servers, the IT administrator is usually your best friends. No one wants to be running a 2008 server when there's a lot better ones out there. Your IT administrators can be your best friends. Your network administrators can be your best friends. It's not like they want to be using switches from 2010. These people are going to be on your side, and people don't think of that. Realize that you can be their champion and not their enemy, or their advocate, however you want to look at it. But that is a huge success story. And of course, with users, expect to get hate mail. You're going to be doing policies, and you need to be able to rationally and unemotionally explain, because people are going to be frustrated, they're going to be threatened, and they're going to be under incredible pressure because they have their own requirements, and suddenly you just rebooted their system or something. So you need to be
that's bad.
But I'm just saying, you have to be ready for that, and you have to be positive at all times. No one wants to work with Oscar the Grouch. You need to always be building people up. And you're like, well, this is a rah-rah. What's technical about this? Well, I'm going to get there in the next couple of briefs, that way to how you make this work. But I'm telling you, you have to have soft skills if you want the hard skills to be successful. And that's.
I want to point out one. Yeah, I want to point out one thing to folks that are actually watching this rather than just listening. And if you're just listening, I'll point it out to you anyway. In the two cover slides that you have as sort of inserts into this slide that you have, that you have the concept. You're talking about getting everybody involved. You have the vulnerability management working group. You have the risk assessment and management team. It isn't Bo's way of doing vulnerability management. It isn't like risk assessment and management, with your name on it. You've got the group involved, so you share the work, but you share the reward when things go well. And I think from a personal anecdote, like that kind of thing matters, because people like sharing in wins when they're involved. Because a lot of the IT staff, a lot of the business staff, it's not in the leadership chairs. and let's face it, we've all had those jobs where you work on something, and your boss gets the credit because the project went well. You're like, yay, my boss got credit. I worked extra 20 hours a week. But when you're part of a team and that team is celebrated together, those victories are celebrated together, it feels a lot better, and you kind of actually are motivated to go do more, become a better participant. So I just wanted to point that out because it's a big deal to me.
Thank you, Rafal. And just for context, for those who are in this, we're wrapping up pretty quickly. We've only got a couple more slides. One of the things I want to talk about is that in IT, we throw out the term technical debt all the time because it's real. But I'm telling you, in InfoSec, if you're trying to address InfoSec requirements, it's people, process, and technology, and you got debt in all three. You got when you have technical debt, let's say you got all these end-of-life systems, you're not patching them. So you don't have a process in place existing today to how to patch servers because you don't do it. So that even when you get rid of the technical debt, now you've got to figure out a process because it's not as easy as saying, oh, it's patched Tuesday. We'll just patch everything on Tuesday night and, hey, the business will work great. That doesn't really work outside the home office environment. So you have that process debt, and then also you're going to have the people debt because it's not just on the InfoSec team, but it's a lot. If your IT folks are already stressed out just trying to manage their servers, when you start adding to patch the servers, now you've got a people debt issue, and you've really got to figure out a process that either A, minimizes the people requirements, or B, alternatively, justifies additional resources. And you have to be able to explain that unemotionally, and I'll talk about that on the next presentation. And one of the things that helps you is you get rid of process debt by writing stuff down. It gets buy-in. You don't write stuff down just so that you can hand it to the auditor by saying he that has the most pages wins. You write it down so that there's consensus on it. As someone who's written policy documents, a lot of them, not one of them was not coordinated with the person doing the work. It was not coordinated with the business unit impacted. You cannot surprise people and say, oh, just because, hey, look, the COO signed this, so now you have to do it. That might work once, and it might work for some people, but I'm telling you in personal experience, that is not a best practice. The best practice is when the business units come out and talk to their people, are you guys tracking this? And they're saying, yeah, we know what's going on. This makes sense. You will get the wins. And the way you do that is because you say in the policy, here's what we're going to do. You generate those periodic reports that actually show progress toward that. Because if you're dealing with debt in all three categories, you're not going to win and get rid of 10 years of technical debt in 1 year. You got to realize this is a journey. And even if you buy, let's say the company just rains money on you and you buy all new servers, it's going to take you another year, not only to get them installed and updated, but to figure out how to manage them, how to do patch management, how to make sure all the security tools are optimized to monitor them. Because maybe your security tools didn't even work on server 2003 if that's what you're running. I don't know. You're like, that never happens. Yeah. Okay, maybe it never happens. Maybe that's just figment of my imagination. But when you get rid of technical debt, it's going to create some process and people debts, and you have to be ready to address those. A concept that will help everyone, and this has been said for over 20 years, automate where able. If you can automate, that will save you time and resources. You have to figure out what can be automated. Like a general good industry best practice is automate operating system updates. Don't automate SQL Server updates, right? Be very careful, choose deliberately. Maybe you do the .NET framework by automated, but don't do everything because the odds are you're going to break something. Find the things that you can automate in patching, get rid of the low-hanging fruit, take the wins, and you're going to start seeing progress in real time. The last thing I want to talk about on this slide, and also I think this might be the last thing for the presentation, is that when you're talking about risk, if you can use terms that are common sense, you're going to win battles. If you have to use 6 degrees to get to Kevin Bacon so that they understand what you're talking about in risk, you're going to lose. So I recommend, as a best practice, tier assets based on how close they are to the internet. If this thing is a public-facing server that anyone can access, that is a higher risk asset than an internal server in a lab that's disconnected. Same thing with a workstation. A workstation, that leaves the building, goes off the off of the security stack because it's now unplugged and it's on the home network, is a higher risk than some desktop that never leaves the building because it's behind your whole security stack. These are things that you can do and explain when like, why am my laptop getting patched so often? Well, because you leave the network. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Or why does this server have to be updated, every week? Well, because it's literally being scanned every minute. So these are things that you can explain to someone in one sentence and get buy-in. And then that's where wins come from.
I like the tiering idea. Before you move on, I like this tiering idea because, look, we all know the world. There's no system that's, it's very, well, maybe no. It's very little stuff that's disconnected. Every time we say, oh, no, those are disconnected, we want somebody to browse Facebook from it. And and off we go. But it's really important to understand, and whether you're doing, I think, a threat modeling exercise to get there, or just something a lot more basic, or a basic threat model, to understand the tier of that, whether it's kind of connectedness, importance to the company, importance to mission, whatever that is, however you score that. Tiers are important because every fire can't be a fire. There's, I think, early on in my career, Bill, I recall, and I'm sure maybe you've gone to this, and I'm pretty sure some of you listening have done this, where you go out, your job is to scan the network for vulnerabilities, and you do, and you find 10,000 critical ones. You're like, all right, here you go, system people, 10,000, go. And they look at you like, they give you the proverbial thank you very much sign, but with a, they give you you're number one, but with a different finger. And suddenly you're like, what? They're all important, right? They're all critical, but you have to take the time to get some understanding, get some, kind of getting better at it, and be able to explain, all right, well, there's 10,000, but if we had to group these, let's say that these 5 are the most important. The next 8,000 are pretty important, and that bottom section, all right, if that has to wait till Monday, fine. But give people a sense that you actually understand. And I think the key here is it's not just relative to security parameters, but it's relative to business. Like, hey, that maybe if you take that thing down, people stop getting paid. Guess what's going to become the high priority for somebody, right?
You're absolutely right, Rafal. I would offer that in those examples, it's helpful to get your metrics right. And I'm going to echo this more in our next one, but just briefly, and so I'll hear this again on the next podcast. 10,000, 100,000, those are meaningless. If you could tie it down to per host, more importantly to their host or to their server, it actually helps out. And then there's terms which I won't go into great detail on, but like the known exploited vulnerabilities that CISA puts out, or name your security vendors high ratings. Almost every vendor will do that for you. It's something that you can justify and actually break it down into numbers that are digestible. But because if you start saying, well, hey, we have 1 million vulnerabilities in our network, that's overwhelming. But if you're talking about on our public-facing servers, we need 17 remediations to occur. Then you can prioritize those 17 remediations. That might kill 150,000 vulnerabilities, but there's 17, and you can actually work through those in a change management process. Because then you can go through change control, where you're just going to lose people. People are saying, we have 150,000 vulnerabilities that we have to clear. No, just talk about,
that's right.
It's a remediation, and it can be done through change control through this action. Let's test it. Let's go through it. And now you've eaten the elephant in one bite at a time. I actually do have one more slide, Rafal, for this presentation. Ahead. And it's something we've kind of talked about. So it's a little like celebrate improvement. And this is where those reports come in handy. And this is where I can tell you from firsthand knowledge, these reports aren't just for yourself. These can go to board members, where board members have asked for them. These can go to the executive leadership team because they want to see how their business unit is doing. And no one I know of gets more excited than when someone knows that the action they took is being shown to the chairman of the board or being shown to the VP in charge of their business unit. And it has nothing to do with their direct job, but it's because they're helping to improve the company by going outside their lane. because that is one way you differentiate yourself as a human being generally, is by showing that I'm bringing additional value into the company beyond which is what's in my personal description, right? So you can actually start getting a lot of excitement when you start calling out the, engineering did this, or the IT systems infrastructure team did this, and that information that gets percolated all the way to the top, it becomes a team win. And I get excited about it. And in all seriousness, those are the kind of things that can justify bonuses for people that are doing the work. And nothing makes me feel better than knowing that if someone is going out of their way to help me, that we can go out of our way to help them back. And I've had success with the company agreeing with me. So that's the last thing I wanted to talk about here, Rafal. If you want to circle back for anything, I'd be glad to.
Yeah, I think I think this is a great setup. This is some foundational work, and so we're going to tackle the work to be done in this next segment. So I would say, folks, come back for that second segment, and we'll give you the rest of it. And Bill, thanks for teeing this up for us. And folks, stay tuned. For now, this is it, and we'll catch you on the next one. Stand by.